Now that we've covered every movie that was produced and released under the official moniker of Studio Ghibli, it's time to branch out to the films that aren't technically Studio Ghibli movies, but may as well be, because members of Studio Ghibli had a large role to play in their creation. Starting with Kaze no Tani no Nausicaä, or Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind. Who is responsible for that title? Oh my god. Spoiler warnings as always, let's get started. I think I made the right call by watching Nausicaä after all of the other Ghibli films, because compared to the others, it is definitely unrefined. However, you can see the inklings of stuff that would become much more focused on and refined in the future of the studio. For example, the beginning of the movie introduces us to the Ohms, these gigantic bug creatures, and at one point, one of them appears to have been animated using a very similar method as what was used on Howl's Moving Castle, with how they seemingly painted these insanely detailed cells and then moved those static cells individually on the frame layered on top of one another, but obviously in its infancy here. The giant warriors feel a lot like a precursor to the robots from Castle in the Sky. They're both these mythical, mysterious beings that get resurrected at points in the film, and that were seemingly made ages ago, but the answers of who by and for what purposes have largely been lost to time, and the power of which the antagonist wants to harness to take over the world. Then there's the theme of environmentalism, which definitely seems to be the most common theme in Ghibli films. Off the top of my head, Pompoko, My Neighbor Totoro, Spirited Away, and Princess Mononoke all have conveyed similar messages. That our environment is alive, and that our advancements in technology are doing irreparable damage to that environment. Personally, I'd say that the Ghibli movies to convey this message most strongly are Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke. But I do still think it's handled very well in Nausicaä, especially with the many references to Christianity being used to portray Nausicaä, the one who seems posed to reunite humanity of a messiah figure. Clearly there are also a ton of aesthetic parallels to be drawn between Nausicaä and later Ghibli movies. I noticed many animation cuts that felt very similar to cuts from Kiki's Delivery Service and Castle in the Sky. I don't know if I could point to one cut specifically that says that's Castle in the Sky, so I'm gonna hope that the clips I'll be showing on screen will be sufficient. I will say that I'm almost 100% sure that the cut of Nausicaa's reaction to seeing the king dead where her hair kinda stands on end has happened in other Ghibli movies almost to a T. I just don't know which. Obviously, there are a lot of character designs that bear similarity to later Ghibli characters. I thought the one evil henchman guy looked just like Muska from Castle in the Sky and Usagi from Tales from Earthsea. Nausicaä herself looks like Satsuki from Totoro, and especially Kiki from Kiki's Delivery Service. We've got an adventurous girl in a skirt flying around on a small transportation device designed for one person with a cat-like companion. Of course, Gigi from Kiki's Delivery Service is actually a character, and that movie was based on a book, so I highly doubt there's some hidden connection between Nausicaä and Kiki. These are just the types of funny little observations I found myself making that felt like they made the whole Ghibli filmography more cohesive, which is just fun. Possibly the most funny connection I drew between Nausicaä and future Ghibli films, or rather film singular, was the voice acting not matching up to the lip flaps, which I remember pointing out specifically in my review of Castle in the Sky. Here it's a lot more noticeable due purely to the grandma whose mouth may as well have been moving completely randomly. It was kind of funny, not a big deal at all. I've seen much worse lip syncing jobs done in so many other anime. And it was just very funny thinking about how they cleaned up their act almost entirely with Castle in the Sky, then ironed out that last wrinkle with all movies in the future. It was kind of charming in a way. Something that I had heard prior to watching this film was that Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind does a really good job at crafting a world that feels extremely rich and lived in, and I was surprised while watching to find that it was even stronger in this department than I was expecting. The three opening scenes, those being the exploration of seemingly a village that was overtaken by the poisonous spores, the opening credits, and then the scene of Nausicaä venturing into the forest to find a Ohm shell and harvest its eye shield thing, whatever, did an unreal job of naturally informing me of so much about this world and the characters who live in it. Those first scenes obviously stand out, but the rest of the film by no means disappoints. I love the little details they included, like how Nausicaä's one-man flyer thing is actually way lighter than it seems, or how those ostrich toucan-looking things gnaw on Nausicaä's head when they see her. I know that means that they know and love her and are excited to see her, because my dog does the exact same thing to me, except he gnaws on my hands. I will say that I feel like the film started losing me as the second act progressed, because I was so invested in the little village that Nausicaä was a part of, but then it starts introducing introducing a lot of new characters at a relatively quick pace. I don't think it's so fast that your average viewer couldn't be expected to keep up. I just think that if you're more interested in other aspects of the movie like I was, you might find yourself wondering, who's that again? What's their deal? Why are they doing that? Etc. Keeping the negative train rolling, I guess. I touched on this a bit earlier, but while Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind looks great, the film is noticeably less polished than other Ghibli movies in terms of presentation, or at least feels like it's less consistently high quality in that regard. While there are no shortage of sequences that will stick in my memory for how well they were visually presented, I think that the majority of this film just looks good in terms of audio design, direction, and especially momentum. I actually remember multiple moments where I described what was happening on screen as wonky. For example, the scene where Nausicaä is running up several flights of stairs, and she just changes direction on a dime like a video game character. Though I will say that the one thing that really sets Nausicaä apart from other Ghibli movies, and one thing it does better than all of them, is the score. The music specifically is fantastic and super unique for Ghibli movies. I'm so used to these soft piano pieces, there's usually some orchestral stuff going on and it's really nice, but Nausicaä really has a standout OST. If you've been paying attention to my channel recently, you probably know that I've been listening to two synth music artists a lot named Select and Justice, and Nausicaä's score, while not sounding like either of their music, definitely has the beeps and boops. It sounds like music that bugs would listen to. I really love it. If only they could have included the song Bug City somehow. Then it would be perfect. Unrelated, but another thing that sets this film apart from other Ghiblis is that it actually unironically presents its main girl as sexually attractive. It's not shoved in the viewer's face by any means, but there are quite a few shots of Nausicaä's skirt blowing up or that one cut of the cat jumping down her shirt, and honestly, I'm a fan of this. I find that the fact that Nausicaä doesn't seem to care much at all about doing activities that reveal her body a bit contributes to the constant aura of determination she just radiates. Also, by planting the seed of her being attractive in the audience's head, I think that the romance between Nausicaä and that boy becomes a bit more natural, so there's that. I'm definitely a huge fan of the way this film depicts and discusses fire. It feels almost the same way that Avatar: The Last Airbender does. It's respectful of the fire's power, but cautious of its destructive capabilities. And I like that stuff because, like, fire is a real thing that exists in the real world, so whenever I light a match, I can just kind of stare at it and be like, whoa, fire, dude, crazy. So, you know, that's fun. Anyway, I try to go in as blind as possible with these movies, and I managed to do so with Nausicaä, except for that I expected it to have the appeal of world building, which it absolutely did. And I also had seen this famous cut, which I know had been animated by Hideaki Anno, the main brain behind most famously Neon Genesis Evangelion, which I love. But the reason I like going in with as little info as possible is because I like noticing references and points of influence naturally on my own. Because if I miss something, I'll almost definitely hear or read about it later, so I like having the chance to experience the film and make all the connections that my brain would make devoid of outside influences just on my own. That's all just a preamble for me talking about the iconic imagery present in this film, which I think was very influential to later works of art. Namely, the ohms feel very much like Metroids from Metroid, and I swear the purified forest under the regular forest that we discover about midway into the film is the kind of setting layout that I think everyone has seen at least one example of. Personally, it kind of reminds me of the City of Tears from Hollow Knight, which sits below the blue lake, which itself is underground, and the water drips through the floor/ceiling just the same way as the sand in Nausicaä's forest does. Very cool stuff. This is the kind of film that I could, in some ways, imagine enjoying much more on a rewatch because the elements of it that I wasn't too stoked about had more to do with me struggling to follow the film, and so with the knowledge of where things are going, I think I would be able to better appreciate those scenes. However, on the flip side, I also think that the roughness around the edges that Nausicaä demonstrates at times might become a bigger deal over the course of a rewatch, so who can really say other than future me? Overall, I enjoyed this film a lot, and I'm feeling a strong 7 out of 10. Hey, ho, let's go. In the comments below, let me know what you thought of this video and Nausicaä of the Valley of the Wind. Also, I don't know why I did that. I think I'm going to watch Castle of Cagliostro next time, so thanks for watching and I'll see you then.